But wait, there's more. Go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen. So it's not just these missiles that are, relatively long range, though not the longest range. We also now have confirmation, according to Sky News, from an interview that they conducted with General Paul Nakasone. He is the head of NSA and also the head of Cyber Command, that U.S. military hackers are conducting offensive operations in support of Ukraine. Now, there's no details here. All we have is this confirmation from the dude who would know, quote, "We've conducted a series of operations across the full spectrum, offensive, defensive, and information operations." There need to be a lot more questions asked about this, because this is another thing that is going on. No public scrutiny.
Yes.
No one is voting for this. No one is having a debate about it. No one is explaining what the potential consequences are. Nobody is laying out what exactly is being done here. And this is also extremely significant. I mean, if anything, our intelligence and our offensive cyber capabilities that we've apparently provided to Ukraine, that is as significant in what they're doing on the ground in this war as the, physical hardware that we are sending there as well.
Absolutely. I've talked before, part of the problem with cyber is that there are no real defined rules of engagement. So whenever we talk about an offensive cyber attack, what does that mean? On what type of hard asset? Are they trying disrupting something? Are they sharing that with the Ukrainians? Is it a conjunction with the Ukrainian cyber defense, if such a unit even exists? The point that I'm making is that the gray area on this is just extraordinary. And we have no idea because there's a high level of uncertainty in how the Russians are going to respond. And let's not delude ourselves. Russia could cripple the global financial system tomorrow if they wanted to with their Russian hackers. I mean, we've already seen Russian mob-affiliated things take down U.S. healthcare, go after several different assets
we've seen
here in
Facebook
America.
Memes destroy our entire
That's
democracy.
That's right. I forgot about that. You're right. But the point is that, what people conjured up as something that actually happened in 2016, I mean, that kind of is in their capability, not in terms of affecting the election, but in terms of just screwing with us, screwing with daily life, causing and wreaking havoc in the corporate world. And then even worse so for the Ukrainians, given their military grid system and how much access now that they have even inside of the country. So we have to be extraordinarily careful. And just to buttress my last point, this is the stuff what we're about to show you, which completely in the shadows, completely up to the administration. Nobody in Congress is having a debate about this. Let's put this up there on the screen. Broke late last night, which is that the U.S. is planning to sell armed drones to Ukraine in the coming days. So let me read from this. The Biden administration is currently planning to sell Ukraine 4 MQ-1C Gray Eagle drones that can be armed with Hellfire missiles for battlefield use against Russia. The sale of these made drones could still be blocked by Congress, and also said there is a risk of a last-minute policy reversal, which could scuttle the plan, which has now been under review at the Pentagon. Now, why does this matter? Because the current drones that we have been providing to Ukraine are smaller, have a much shorter range, and are unmanned aerial systems against Russian forces. But the Gray Eagle represents a leap in technology because it can fly up to 30 or more hours, depending on its mission, can gather huge amounts of data for intelligence purposes, and because they can carry up to 8 powerful Hellfire missiles. The sale is significant because, and I'm putting directly quote here, an advanced, reusable U.S. system capable of deep strikes, multiple deep strikes, on the battlefield against Russia for the first time. So this is what, again, I would have defined in the previous segment about offensive weapons. This gives you, I mean, look, Ukraine and Russia are right there. And depending on if you're Russian and who you ask where exactly the border is very much up for debate. So a U.S. Hellfire missile, given to the Ukrainian forces being used possibly against, let's imagine that they use it against a Russian ship again. We already know they used the British weapons against that ship and sank the flagship. This just enters the realm of upping the ante. And where I really get concerned is there's no debate and it is 100% up to the sole discretion of the president. I mean, I've said this in our last show. Joe Biden is like 80 years old. He could literally drop dead, which means that Kamala tomorrow could decide to send anything up to like nukes over to Ukraine, and we would have nothing to say about it. Zero. Congress already given them the authority. They can only advise after the fact. I think the only reason they can even advise here is because we're selling the weapons. We're not just giving it to them, because it probably falls outside of that aid package. But put it together with that cyber report, this is the gray area stuff where, Biden may do a decent enough job, in my opinion, of pushing back against some of the war establishment.
Some of the most maximalist.
Some of the most, yeah, exactly. Like the people calling for war, but that does not mean he's got the deep state under control whatsoever.
No, far from it. I mean, it looks like what happened here is, remember there was that whole idea and discussion of we're going to send fighter jets.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, but wait a second, how are we going to get them there, and what pilots, and how is this all going to work? And does that then lead to this offensive capability? Obviously it does. Mm-hmm. And so when that was kind of thankfully taken off the table, this is like the substitute. So, okay, well, we're not going to give you fighter jets, but we'll give you something that can do a lot of the same things and just doesn't have the messiness of having a human being, an actual pilot involved. Again, it's not a done deal. Congress could still say no. They probably won't. They almost certainly won't. But this is yet another escalation. And to go back to where we started all of this discussion, that Biden op-ed, he does talk in there about the threat of nuclear weapons. And to my mind, the language he uses is very cavalier.
Oh, it's scary stuff.
What he says is, I know many people around the world are concerned about the use of nuclear weapons. Oh, really? You think so? We currently see no indication that Russia has intent to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine, though Russia's occasional rhetoric to rattle the nuclear saber is itself dangerous and extremely irresponsible. Let me be clear, any use of nuclear weapons in this conflict on any scale would be completely unacceptable to us as well as the rest of the world and would entail severe consequences. So, number one, I mean, making it very clear that if there is any sort of use of a nuclear weapon by Russia, that means
yeah,
it's on.
It's on.
It's
That's
on.
effectively what he's saying.
Nuclear war.
Right.
But also, like I said, the downplaying of the risk, the cavalier language here about, oh, they're just rattling the nuclear saber, I also don't think is reflective of the true cataclysm it would be if we ended up in that type of conflict. And as we've said many, many times, even if that risk is very, very low, it justifies going to extraordinary lengths to make sure that we do not end up in that situation.
Yeah, look, it's just all about balancing and making sure that we are extraordinarily careful and considered in what we have and in considering what we do, what we say, and the boxes that it can catch you into. Because now once you say that, you can't take it back.
Right.
There's a reason that we actually have ambiguity around basically our decision-making on all things nuclear. And it's in order to keep maximal policy options available to policymakers in the event that we do ever come to such a conflict. And that maximum optionality is what saved us during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's something very key in order to emphasize, which is that only because we had President Kennedy who was in charge and he himself had served in war, was terrified of war, had studied the Munich crisis and had studied so much of what happened in World War II, that we are all alive today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what really scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Is their ability, only because you had a decent statesman who was in charge. And I don't have a lot of confidence looking at where we're at right now, unfortunately, Krystal.
Indeed. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.